Now I come back. I don't see water coming out. I don't see the sink. That's the sink.
Welcome everyone to this multi-part series on how you can build your own custom vanity. As you can see from the intro, I had a bit of a problem. When we first moved in, there was a leak, and what happened was there was an old vanity there that was made out of presswood, and it soaked up a lot of water and basically was falling apart and was a big giant mold and mildew greenhouse. It was pretty disgusting. So we tore that out, and it has been that way, I hate to say it, for about 2 years. The first question you might ask is, why didn't I just go out and buy a new vanity and just have it installed? Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's pretty boring. It wouldn't make a good video. Number two, they're pretty expensive. And number three, and probably the most important, is that the vanity that was in there fit between these two walls. And it was kind of custom fit, and I couldn't find anything that would fit into that same space, especially something that was in a single sink versus a double sink. This is over 60 inches wide, and all the off-the-shelf ones were all double sinks, and I wasn't about to rip open the walls for a kid's bathroom and redo all the plumbing. I just wanted to put something in place that looked nice and filled the space and looked like it should be there. So I figured, why pay someone else $20,000 to build a vanity when I can spend $40,000 on lumber and build it myself? So it's finally time to do something about it. Now, staying in line with all the projects I do, I've never done this before, so I'm going to do this so I make all the mistakes and you can learn from them. Or you might just find entertainment in my sadness and misery. We'll just have to see how it all goes. Now, there's going to be a couple of new things with this video series. First of all, I'm going to do something that I've actually never done before. I got a little bit into CAD in the last few weeks, and I decided to draw up some plans. Now, I'll be working from these plans, but I make no promises on whether or not I'll actually follow them. So out of the plans, I realized, well, you know what? This might be something that I should share on my webpage. And then I realized that the website is pretty out of date and I don't really have any easy way to share files like this. So I went on and redesigned the whole website just for all of you out there. And you can check out the new website, and it's at the same old address, and that address is right here. So go check it out. There is a bunch of old content, and there's some new content, and a whole bunch of new features that I plan on rolling out in the future. This is video one in a series, and there'll be multiple videos as we go through building the different parts of this bathroom vanity. I wanted to break it up into smaller, more digestible pieces, and frankly, give me some time to figure out how to build the next part. So let's start off with the vanity base. That's the focus of this video. Now, there are two main different ways you can build a vanity base, and one way is to have it integrated into the base cabinets, and this would be the same for vanity as for something like kitchen base cabinets. What you do is basically build the toe kick into the cabinet, and you have to cut out the little corner for the toe kick, and well, let's just put it this way. I didn't want to do any of that. And in this case, there really wasn't any reason to do it because this vanity is sandwiched between two walls. So one of the primary reasons of going with the integrated toe kick is so that when you're looking at the final edge of the cabinet, it's all one continuous piece of wood from the top to the floor, and there's no spot where there's a separation between the base and the cabinet. So that not being a problem, I decided to go with an external base. And the reason I'm going to do these external bases is because it gives me one big benefit. Well, a few big benefits. First is it'll be a little bit easier to slide the base into place and finagle it into position. Two, It allows me to level the base and attach it to the wall and get everything perfect before I put the cabinets on. Now, it'll be a lot easier to level a light base and with only a few pieces of plywood that hold it together and get everything nice and straight before I put the cabinets on top. This will make it so that when I put the cabinets on, I don't have to make any adjustments. That was the primary reason that I did this. It's time to go ahead and build this base. So I'm going to be building this out of 3/4 inch plywood. 3/4 inch plywood makes a good material to build a base out of because it's very strong when you push down on it, and it's pretty dimensionally stable in every direction. So if this is in a moist environment, it's not going to expand and contract and knock everything out of whack. The other benefit of using plywood is it's pretty good when it comes to getting a little damp or a little wet, and this is a bathroom, so dampness and wetness come with that, without bulging or bubbling and pretty much disintegrating like pressboard would. For this base, I purchased 1 sheet of plywood, and I'm going to have some left over. It probably only takes about half a sheet of plywood to build the entire base, and you'll also notice for those plywood experts out there that this is a pretty nice piece of plywood. It's a red oak veneered plywood to use for a base, and the reason was I needed something that was solid, didn't have any voids, and I also didn't need more inexpensive plywood for any other projects. So using this, yeah, maybe it's a little overkill for the base, but I'll be able to use the rest of it when I go build the rest of the vanity. So I went ahead with that, and the price really wasn't that different. Before we go ahead and break down that sheet of plywood, we need to talk a little bit about the dimensions of the vanity. So this is where my plans will differ from yours because everyone's size for their vanity is going to be a little bit different. It's really important here to measure and measure pretty carefully. So you want to start by measuring from wall to wall. If your case is like mine, where you're putting the vanity between 2 walls, I'm going to do this in several places. And the reason is the walls probably are not straight. How does it look?
Not good. It's not good.
They never are. And I've said this a million times in all my videos. Measure a lot and double check yourself, because once this is built, it's not going to be easy to take apart and make it a little bit shorter to fit in. This has to fit nice and snug and can't get stuck. So I measured in the back, I measured in the front, I measured a couple places in between, and then I took the smallest measurement, and that's the width of my vanity base. The next measurement we want to talk about is the height, and this is going to be the height of your toe kick. Now, toe kicks on average are between 3.5 and 4.5 inches high. It really doesn't make a difference what you choose because only your foot needs to fit under this. The bottom of the cabinet is going to cantilever over like this, and your toes are going to go underneath. And that's just to make it more comfortable to work at the sink or stand by it. The next dimension you're going to want to look at, and this is a critical one and something to think about, is how deep do you need your vanity to be? In my case, I want the countertop, once it's all built up, to be 22 inches off the wall. Now, 22 inches from the wall to the edge of the countertop is very different than the dimension from the wall to the front of the base. The reason for that is you're going to want a little bit of overhang for the countertop. You're also going to have to accommodate for a face frame if you're using one, and in this design we will be using a face frame, and that's going to be 3/4 of an inch, and the depth of your toe kick. So the depth of a toe kick is also between 3.5 and 4.5 inches normally. And in my case, I went 4 inches in. And I may shorten that up because I'll probably put some kind of laminate or a piece of hardwood across the front of the base that matches the hardwood that I'm going to use to go around the face frame and on the cabinet covers and the drawers, so that it all matches. And in that case, that's going to add a little bit of thickness. So the final thickness from the front of the doors back to the toe kick will be somewhere between 3.5 and 4 inches. So did you get all of that? Because once you have all that, you got to figure out how deep should your base be. Here's how it sums up. In my case, I want a 22-inch countertop from the back of the wall to the front. I want it to overhang 1 inch. So I can subtract that 1 inch off. So now I'm at 21 inches. I'm going to have a 3/4 inch face frame. So that brings me to 20 1/4. We're also going to need to subtract off the 4 inches for the toe kick depth. And don't forget that you also need to subtract the 3/4 of an inch from the front of the plywood piece and from the back plywood piece. And that means that our dividers or our struts that go in between along this are all going to be 1 foot 3.5 inches. I think you can see why this time around I actually made plans. Now that you have all the dimensions, we can go ahead and we can start cutting out the pieces from the plywood. So I have 2 pieces, front and back, 64 inches like this. I'm going to need a whole bunch of components that are for the in-between struts, and those are all going to be 1 foot 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to need a whole bunch of blocks that are going to be those strut supports or the cross member supports. Those are all going to be 4-inch squares. And then I'm finally going to need a whole bunch of corner pieces, and those corners are going to be, we'll just make them 4 inches on each side. There are a lot of comments about how to build what they call this ladder assembly, how you give structural support to a detached base like this. But no one really showed how to do it. It just mentioned make a ladder. Okay, well, I wasn't sure what that is, so I made a stylized ladder, and we're going to have these little S-struts in between just because it's a bit different, but they do provide more surface area to support the weight of the cabinet. Now, for all these little S-struts that provide the support for the cabinet above, we're going to make them out of the same size 1 foot 3.5 inch members that we use to make the sides of the base, and we're going to reinforce them with 4-inch high by 3-inch wide supports. And we'll go ahead, we'll cut all that out, and I'll show you how they're assembled. Alrighty, well, we got that 4x8 piece of plywood broken down, and now I have the front and back pieces to the vanity base. I have all the cross supports cut, as well as the corner braces, the support braces, and we're ready to go start assembling this base unit. So the first step that we're going to need to take is we're going to need to build a whole bunch of these S pieces. And these will be the crossbars that go from front to back and hold everything in alignment, but also provide support for the cabinets that we're going to put in above it. Now, building these is pretty easy. We're just going to use glue to glue these together and some crown staples to hold it in place while the glue dries. Now, you could also use brad nails, but sometimes I shoot in a little deep and it doesn't hold a secure connection while the glue dries, and these pieces can be a little loose. But when I use the crown staples, the little piece that connects to 2 pins is good enough to hold it from pushing through, and everything works perfect. And as you can see, this is quite stiff and will hold pretty well. Now that we got all the cross supports put together and turned into this cool sculpture, we can go ahead and we can build the basic frame of the box. So we'll use these front and back pieces and 2 more of our cross members, and we'll just go ahead and frame out the box, and then we'll use these corner pieces to square it up and to give it a little bit more support. To assemble the box, we're going to do the same thing we did with the cross supports. We're just going to go ahead, we're going to glue them in place, and then we're going to put a few staples to hold them while the glue dries. So here we are back in the bathroom, and we have the base pushed back into place. Now notice I didn't put the S cross braces in before I did this part of the install, and that's because I wanted it to be a little bit more flexible just in case I needed to shimmy this into place. But we'll go ahead and we'll add all those S supports in now, and then that will finish up the base. Now once you have all the S brackets ready to go in, you can just do the same thing we did before, where you glue it up and staple it into place until the glue dries, and you have a completed vanity base. Now, depending on your design, you might want to actually move these S brackets around so that they're underneath the part that needs to support the different vertical components that might be going up that will eventually hold the load of a countertop or a sink or something like that. Now I just spaced these out evenly as an example, and yes, it's overkill. You probably don't need this many braces to support a bathroom vanity and a sink and a countertop, but I just wanted to show you how you could customize this a bit to support the different types of loads that you might have when you design your own vanity. Now, having all those cross braces does have another benefit, and that is when you come to this final step, which is to level out the entire base and screw it into the studs in the wall, there are lots of places to put shims, and that will make it really easy to level the base if you have more places to put these into. Now, for the shims, I recommend these handy shims. They're made out of plastic. I try to stay away from wood or anything that could swell or degrade over time. These plastic ones won't do that. There's other ones on the market that are similar, so use whatever you like, but definitely use a plastic or a composite shim for this process. So let's go ahead and finish this part of the project off and finish off video 1 in the series by leveling this and mounting it to the wall. The shims are in place. I've checked for level. The base is all nice and flat now, and I can go ahead and screw this in place, and I will be done with the installation. Well, that wraps up video 1 in this series on how to build your own custom bathroom vanity. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel and also send a like down below. It'll make it much easier to find the parts that come after this, like part 2, where we're going to go ahead and build the cabinet carcass. Also, check out the new website. I'm going to try to put some blog posts and include things for free download, like the plans that I use to build the base of these cabinets, and a whole bunch of other content that you might find interesting, and I'd love to hear your feedback about what else I could add to it. We'll see you again on the next video, which will be part 2, or how to build the carcass for this vanity. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments below, or you can go on over to the website and leave a comment there as well. Until next time, good luck with all your projects, and we'll see you again soon. Hey, there's no break.